This is the Merschman Seeds Ag Weather Outlook, the last day of March 2018. Well, you know, some springs are fairly quiet, not too many. Some springs are very active. This has certainly been an interesting start to spring for another reason, and it's, I think, because of how cool it's been, and in some areas how wet it's been. Now, generally speaking, and this is generally, and when I'm talking about the entire ag region, you almost have to talk generally because there's always going to be some nuances here and there. But we don't need a whole lot more rain in most areas getting started to the season. Now, over the last week, you can see the rain of 2 inches or more fell over parts of southern Illinois, large parts of Indiana, parts of Ohio, almost all of Kentucky, also parts of the south central U.S. Now, I've overlaid, in case you're wondering where all this water is going to, I overlaid the river basins here. So this is all running into the Ohio River Basin in this region here, upper Mississippi and lower Mississippi. So really the trend has been the Ohio and the lower Mississippi has been really the action spots as far as where all this water has come. Parts of the up middle Mississippi, also downstream of St. Louis, is running fairly high. Now, in addition to that rainfall we also had more snow over the upper Midwest, and it's certainly very weary of winter over the upper Midwest, with more snow continuing along with that very cold temperature pattern. I thought you might be interested in looking at the month of March, the departure here. Areas in green are indicating a surplus of precipitation for the month of March. That's why I'm saying most areas here do not need additional precipitation and would benefit from drying out a bit. Now, there are some exceptions. Look at Kansas. Kansas is unusually dry. Look at Wisconsin. Parts of Wisconsin have dried out after being wet earlier in the winter months. But overall, I think the story is let's dry out a little bit and definitely warm up. As far as temperatures go, this was last week right here. Very cool week, if not cold. Iowa here, look at this, -6 to as much as -10 degrees below normal. Southern part of the U.S., unusually warm. So we've had that boundary there. This is the month of March here, and you can see that almost the entire Corn Belt, primary Corn Belt, was below normal during the month of March. Green being, the light green being up to 3 degrees below normal, and you can even see a couple spots 3 to 6 degrees below normal, the darker shades of green. So soils remain wet in a few areas, in quite a few areas actually. These are these pockets of green here, and this is a model simulation of soil moisture, so take it with a grain of salt. You know, there are some areas here that are not going to be all that representative, but it gives us some idea that at least we don't have too many areas that are unusually dry. Now, there are some exceptions here. Look at Kansas into Oklahoma, western Oklahoma, and Texas. Those are the areas that have been really dry. So if we need any additional precipitation, it looks like it's primarily over Kansas. Okay, now I bring this up here, and you might say, hey, look at this. This looks like January. Well, it does. If you listen to me each week, remember the polar vortex? We have this circulation going around this area of low pressure, the jet streams dipping. That's not what we want to be talking about as we get into the first week of April, because as you know, that's going to allow a lot of cold air to sink over the area, centered over Montana, North Dakota, and Minnesota, but definitely covering a good part of the Corn Belt, almost the entire region. Along with a push of the cold air, another push of cold air, will be some shower activity. It's going to be not as heavy as we've seen in the past, but it still could be a good soaking rain, and not so good really in many of these areas that don't need the additional rain, especially Kentucky, which will keep those rivers, tributaries running quite high. So Kentucky, which was very wet last week with 2 inches or more, looks like it could get another 2 inches. Parts of southern Illinois, Indiana, Ohio also quite wet. Elsewhere, not so bad this week as far as it goes for precipitation. April 5th through 10th, not a whole lot of change. Perhaps not as intense low, perhaps not as intense digging to the trough. But when we look at temperatures, we're looking at temperatures, it looks like generally 10 to 15 degrees below normal over the entire Midwest, Ohio River Valley, and over the upper Midwest, as much as 20 degrees below normal. So if you're expecting spring to be right around the corner, doesn't look like it. It looks like this is going into almost the middle part of the month, and here is the middle part of the month. Now, the jet stream's starting to come back to normal position, sort of a west to east type flow, but it looks like temperatures are going to lag. So I think we're looking at through the middle of the month at least for temperatures to be below normal over almost the entire region, mainly over the north central U.S. Now, there will be some periods in here, we'll have some fluctuations between reinforcing cold fronts, so there will be some periods where we do warm up a bit, but I think they will be short-lived with reinforcing cold. So I mentioned this week basically the Ohio River Valley, the eastern Corn Belt states would be the area that would be wet. Also some snow over the upper Midwest. Here's week 2. Week 2 right now looks quiet as far as precipitation goes with that cold air. Cold air is fairly quiet, but areas over the southern, south central U.S., maybe even a little bit more over Kansas in week 2. Now, here's week 3 and 4 way out there, so let's just sort of keep that in mind that this could change. I don't want to see this in week 3 or 4. At least this model output here is saying right through the end of the month of April, we could be fighting this unusually cold type weather, equal chances for either above or below normal precipitation. So I think overall, even though we'll have some, brief respites from time to time, I think the story here is that the unusually chilly spring weather pattern looks like it's going to persist, if not just next week, could be very well through most of the month of April. Next week, it does look like some heavy rain over the eastern Corn Belt, and that's not a good combination either. Generally wet soils, more rain, and cool temperatures. So I don't have a whole lot of good news as far as the weather this week, but I do want to wish you and your family a very happy Easter, and I'll be talking with you again next weekend. Take care.